The Amazing Spider-Man was released in 2012 and stars Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. And in this movie, we get a retelling of Spider-Man's origin story and find out about how Peter Parker got his powers. Again. Well guys, like Sony, we are leaving Tobey Maguire behind and we're heading into the future with Andrew Garfield as we get to see a new web crawler on the silver screen. I remember when this movie came out, I had the midnight release poster. Yes, I was there for the midnight release. I was so excited to watch Spider-Man again in the movies, and after I watched it, Let's get right into the positives. Let's talk about Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Now, I'll talk about his Peter Parker in a little bit. I had a blast watching him as Spider-Man in this movie. Once he put on the costume, once he finally became Spider-Man, he was so much fun to watch because he has something that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man didn't. It was that he was funny. You know, he was kind of relaxed when he was Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's original trilogy was a more serious take on Spider-Man, which we all love, of course. But, you know, sometimes you want to see the real Spider-Man come to life. And I feel like we kind of got that a little bit. I love seeing Spider-Man give out one-liners. I saw him being more relaxed.
The knife. Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
I loved watching that when Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man. That's something that Tobey didn't do, and I'm glad they did it here. Because at the end of the day, Peter Parker's a teenager, you know, and he's in high school in this movie, so he's gonna have that high school humor, he's gonna have that high school attitude, so it's good that they implemented that in this movie. And speaking of Spider-Man, I really like the costume in this movie. I know when it was first shown, people really didn't like it. I don't know why. I actually really like it. It's something different. I didn't want them to try and be as much like Sam Raimi's trilogy as possible. I'm glad that they wanted to do something different. I really like the look of it. I think it's cool. I think it matches the tone of the movie, and you want that. Especially with how many different costumes and outfits there are of Spider-Man. It's good to stick out. It's good to have something new. And speaking of new, Spider-Man does have a new love interest. It's not Mary Jane Watson. In this, we get Gwen Stacy. So let's talk about Emma Stone.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Don't worry, Emma, you are not in trouble because you are actually one of the better parts of this movie. Their chemistry is off the charts. It just felt more relaxed on screen. It felt more natural. It just felt more real. And I like the awkwardness sometimes between them because, again, this is high school love. You know, they're students at the end of the day. So it's really cool that we got that awkward teenage, you know, romance, that awkward dialogue between them. But they made it work and they were just awesome together. They definitely elevated scenes once both of them were put together. What I also liked about Gwen Stacy that they didn't do in Spider-Man 3 with that crappy Gwen Stacy, she's like her own person. Like she's not like this, you know, stereotypical damsel in distress. Like she can take care of herself. She's a super smart student. She's smarter than Peter. And, you know, she can stand her ground and she's actually capable. Like there are at times in the movie where she's like, no, I can do this by myself. I can go save the world by myself. At one point, she goes to, you know, back to Oscorp to come up with the antidote because she can do that. And I like that they wrote her character like that because Mary Jane in the original trilogy, she was kind of like the damsel in distress. You know, every time she was in trouble, she couldn't really do anything. But in this, you actually get, you know, Spider-Man's love interest being a very capable person, which is really good, and I like that change of pace. Another big positive for me is I really like the action scenes. We don't get a lot of them, but when we do get them, they're pretty good. Obviously, CGI and VFX, they've advanced so much since the original Raimi trilogy, so obviously stuff's going to look better, and I think they did that very well. I think some of the choreography is pretty good. I just wish they did a little bit more creativity. I thought they could have done some more with Spider-Man versus Lizard, but other than that, I liked it a lot. And another thing that I actually found really interesting was that they kind of delved into what happened to Peter's parents. In the original trilogy, it's like Peter's parents didn't really exist, but in this we actually get to talk about, whoa, what happened to Peter's parents? Why are they gone? Did something happen to them? And they made them kind of agents, secret agents in a way. I'm not sure if they're agents. I know they kind of work, I know Peter's dad worked for Oscorp, but I think they kind of pulled that little weird government conspiracy about how they died and are they involved in some stuff. So that was pretty cool. I like that part. I just wish they explored it more in the movie because they kind of, you know, they kind of talked about it in the first half, but, you know, once Peter got his spider powers, then really it all became null and void. It's like you forgot about it, and they didn't even talk about it way later until the next movie. So I kind of wish they kept at a more constant theme throughout, but I mean, I'm not going to be too picky about that. So let's get right into my negatives. Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, great. Loved watching him. Andrew Garfield's portrayal as Peter Parker, it didn't really work for me. And the one thing that kind of bothered me is that, you know, they kind of they tried so hard to portray him as this guy who's always getting bullied, But he just seemed way too, like, cool, like, way too chill, way too relaxed, especially around Gwen. I mean, he was nervous a couple scenes, but then some he was just this super suave guy just saying great one-liners to her, and I'm just like, who? This isn't Peter Parker. Like, what is this? For some reason, Andrew Garfield, I don't know why, they made him, like, whisper and mumble a lot of his lines. Like, he'll just be sitting there and be like,
Okay, I gotta tell you this one thing. I can't, it's hard to say.
okay, look, listen, I got bit by a spider, and then, just something happened to me, and we gotta talk about the lizard. We gotta talk about cross species. It didn't work for me. I didn't like his portrayal of Peter Parker. I think he was a little better in the second movie, but in this one, I think he tried too hard to be different than Tobey's, and it just didn't work for me. Something else that didn't work for me, it's like Spider-Man's powers aren't even special anymore. Like, I don't know what this movie was doing that, hey, when they started this, like, look, they already know what Spider-Man's powers are, let's not give a crap about it. I don't get it. Spider-Man's powers are so awesome because, look, right when he gets bit by that spider in this movie, and he starts, exploring his powers, they're not viewed as special. Like, I know I keep going back to the original trilogy, but I have to because this is the origin story. So we have to talk about the original origin movie in the first one. When you saw Peter climb that wall for the first time with Tobey Maguire, it just felt special. It felt so iconic. You were like, wow, this is a big deal. This is unbelievable. It's amazing. He started jumping to buildings. He was all excited because his powers are something special. There's something cool, and they want the audience to know that. But in this movie, you never got that. I mean, yeah, they kind of explored his powers a little bit, and then you got like a glorified Skate 3 promo where he's just skating around. Like, he's not even exploring his powers. It's like he's taking them for granted already. Like, he doesn't feel like they're special. He's just like, oh yeah, I deserve this. Like, this is cool. Another negative for me, and I didn't want to put this as a negative, but when I watched this movie, I just couldn't help it. The Lizard overall. Now, the Lizard is a great villain for Spider-Man, a great starter villain to get people interested in the movie again. Kirk Connors is such an interesting character because, obviously, if you watch the movie, he has one arm. He wants to try and get that arm back, so he starts doing cross-species genetics. Then he has an accident. He becomes the Lizard, and then he's like, look, I've realized that, hey, everybody needs to be a lizard. That way everybody's perfect. I don't want anybody to have imperfections. That's a great story. What makes the Lizard so great is that you feel sympathetic towards Kirk Connors, because if you've watched, the cartoons, if you read the comics, you see that Kirk Connors is a very sympathetic character. He's a mentor to Peter. Sometimes it's teacher-student, sometimes it's just friends. And no matter what, there's a connection there. But for some reason in this movie, there's no connection. Right from the start, he gives off this vibe of, yo, hey, there's something off about this dude. So when Peter starts talking about this to Gwen, saying like, hey, I created him. Hey, I need to stop him because I did this. You don't feel anything. If they at least established a bond, a good bond between Peter and Kirk Connors, maybe like a teacher or just friends, I think it would have been better. But the way they executed, they went the most basic way, and I think it hurt them in the end. This might be the biggest negative for me. What was up with Uncle Ben and Aunt May? Like, it's like they just copy-pasted just generic parental figures and then just named them Uncle Ben and Aunt May. They gave, like, really, stereotypical, really cliche, advice that Uncle Ben gives to Peter, and it doesn't pack a punch. Like, you don't feel a connection between Peter and his aunt and uncle. In fact, when you watch their scenes together, you never really feel like there's genuine love between them. You just feel like there's always animosity. Like, there's always something wrong. Like, you can just tell by the way Peter acts that he just doesn't like to be around them. And I don't get why they did that. Especially when Uncle Ben dies, you don't care. Like, don't get me wrong, we've seen Uncle Ben die like 1,000 times in the comics, in the shows, movies. Like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing Uncle Ben die. When you see him, when he gets shot, you don't feel it. You don't have that, that impact, that punch that the original Raimi movie had. So when Uncle Ben dies, it's down to Peter and Aunt May, and this is where the connection is supposed to grow. They're supposed to connect, but in this you don't. Peter actually ignores Aunt May. He doesn't really care about her. I mean, he doesn't even get her eggs. I don't know why they did that for the longest time. Aunt May and Peter is supposed to be like the best bond. It's supposed to be the strongest bond out of anything in the entire Spider-Man universe. And the fact that they didn't make it as good as it's supposed to be, it just didn't make sense. And that's the thing overall that bothers me the most about this movie, is that it was clearly a cash grab. Because look, they didn't need to do another origin story. Like, I get what happened. There was supposed to be a Spider-Man 4 because Spider-Man 3 was terrible. Raimi said he couldn't find a proper story. He was too stressed about trying to make the perfect Spider-Man movie, so he just dropped it. So Sony's like, okay, let's just reboot it and make a new Spider-Man movie. No. this is where you go wrong. Do another Spider-Man movie, but make him where he's already Spider-Man. There's a reason why Tom Holland is doing so good as Spider-Man, because when they made his movie, he's already Spidey. If we had Tom Holland's origin story Spider-Man, it would not do as well as Homecoming, because we would be sick and tired of seeing Peter get his powers. Just like what happened here. We're tired of seeing Peter get bit by a spider, exploring his powers. We're kind of tired of that. We want to see something different. And they didn't do that. They played it kind of safe in this movie. Just saying, hey, just show him getting bit, kind of explore his powers, just play it safe. Like a generic Spider-Man movie. That will make money, and then we'll do a sequel. You can tell they wanted to do that, and it just bothered me. That just shows how much they don't care about this character. They're just milking out Spider-Man movies because they know we'll go see it. Because of course I'm going to see it. It's Spider-Man. It's my favorite superhero. But at the same time, I want him to be treated right, and Sony didn't do that.
How dare you?
Overall, guys, The Amazing Spider-Man is an interesting movie. The things that I liked even more, but the things I just hated them even more. So I'm going to give it a straight up B. I think it's a solid watch. Like if I watch it, I won't complain. But at the same time, I would prefer to watch the original Raimi trilogy, not Spider-Man 3. This is better than Spider-Man 3 for sure. But at the same time, it just felt too safe, and you kind of get frustrated by the end of this movie. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.